why more broadly should the different stakeholders in the legal profession care? What are the implications for their individual roles? And let's start with judges. They have, maybe the most important role in upholding the public's trust in administering justice. So what are the implications of generative AI for judges?
Yeah, this to me is one of the most exciting frontiers of this technology, the legal profession. And I think I'm going to address judges and the public they serve all in one answer, if it makes sense. That the civil justice system in America is basically a massive market failure. That 92% of Americans can't afford help to navigate their civil justice problems. And that means, for the most part, they either give up and they just don't try and navigate them, or they try and manage them without lawyers. In state courts, that means in most cases, 75%, I think, of civil cases, at least one party is unrepresented. And there are lots of state courts doing as much as they can with the limited funding they have and limited personnel they have to really work to find creative ways to help people navigate problems. And this technology is a game changer for courts who want to deliver better service to those people who have problems, and they're going to have to navigate them, and they're not going to be able to pay lawyers to help them, and to the public who needs that help. So I find this to be one of the biggest areas where I'm excited about what kinds of change it might bring to the legal profession. There's actually at least one court, maybe there are more. There's one that I'm aware of in Maricopa County, Arizona, where the creative court administrator has built his own custom GPTs based on the technology that OpenAI has, the GPT framework, to produce chatbots to help self-represented parties with different legal problems. And those are actually not that hard to build. I mean, you can build them yourself, and they can provide real help to people. So I think if it allows courts to provide much better service and information to the people they serve, and it allows the people they serve to get much better information, we might really grow public confidence in our public justice system. And to me, that's the whole ballgame, because the rule of law is just a set of ideas, and if people don't have confidence in it, it doesn't hold. Okay, that was a long one. What about the business of law, sort of private practice, law firm leaders? Why do you think they should care?
So I think law firm leaders should care deeply, mainly because of how their business is structured and the way they serve clients, the way they generate revenue, the way that they train and develop new lawyers. All of this will be impacted pretty profoundly, I think, by a technology that works as easily as it does and will in the future with language. If you think about the law firm business model, there are a couple elements of it that conflict directly with what the technology is able to do. The first, of course, is the billable hour. And we've been hearing for our entire careers about the demise of the billable hour. And everybody says you'd be a fool to bet against it. I'm not betting against it. I think it will always remain part of a pricing portfolio, but it is, a model that is rooted in inefficiency, right? It doesn't necessarily reward you doing something very quickly. And actually, if you look at the trend line, there was a recent Thomson Reuters report, I think the Law Firm Financial Index report, and I could be wrong on that, but a TR report came out that showed that we're actually at the bottom of a 20-year decline across all timekeepers in all AmLaw 200 firms in all practice areas of the number of hours billed per timekeeper per year. So those numbers have been on the decline. The thing that has offset that decline has been the rise in rates. So the revenue continues to be greater over time, but those hours were already under pressure, and they dipped after the Great Recession, and that dip never recovered. So when you're basing your work on a billable hour, that creates vulnerability with a technology that does things very efficiently. The other element of law firm business models is their leveraged labor. Law firm partners come together to practice together, and they hire junior associates of all levels. to leverage what they're doing by generating more revenue, by doing tasks that are more entry-level tasks so that they can expand their ability to serve clients. But that leveraged labor model will continue to be under pressure as the technology becomes more capable of doing some of the tasks that junior associates currently bill for, which contribute in a massive way to the revenue that law firms are able to generate. And then the third, actually, there are two more reasons. One are the clients. Unlike prior waves of technology where the firms were really the player in the relationship to make the investment in a technology like e-discovery or some automated workflows, on both sides of the transaction now, you will have lawyers using this technology. So a general counsel will be deeply interested in figuring out how to reshape their legal spend by learning how they can use the tools in-house. So if you're thinking about the two buckets that GCs send to law firms, there is the specialized bucket of really sophisticated legal questions, and they don't have the expertise in-house, and they need a sophisticated law firm partner to help them. And then there's the overflow bucket where they do have the expertise, they just don't have the person power to actually do that work. That second bucket could be absorbed by technology in-house, which would make the GC look really great to their C-suite if they're able to spend their legal dollars on the more high-end business strategy questions that the business wants to solve for. And the last reason is just we have an apprenticeship-based model of lawyer formation at the early years where we spend a long time doing rote tasks in isolation from the broader representation, and those become the building blocks of judgment and strategy and client service. And in a world where that time period collapses, where the tasks that make up that work go away or are changed, that has enormous implications for what your junior lawyers are doing, how your in-house talent teams are able to support them, and what the future leadership of your firm looks like. And we're doing all of this post-COVID, where there was already a skills disruption in the early years of practice because we were doing everything virtually. So I think maybe they might be one of the most impacted stakeholders in the legal ecosystem. And I sort of touched on general counsel, but how do you think corporate legal departments are thinking about these issues?
Well, I think for exactly the reasons you just articulated, the in-house counsel, corporate counsel are absolutely focused on the ways in which this technology is going to change their relationships with their outside counsel and the expectations their clients are going to have for them. In many businesses, their clients are already using the technology in other parts of the business, or at least figuring out where they're going to use it and how they're going to use it. And so they have the same expectation for their counsel's office. Why can't the counsel's office use the technology to produce the same kinds of efficiencies? But I think it also gives them this opportunity to think about how they structure their work in-house in ways that allow them to better serve their clients. You know, the same way, if law firms get this right, they can rebuild the way they serve their clients and the kinds of value they provide their clients. I think that the same is true of in-house departments. They can rethink what their ops teams can do and how they do it, and therefore where they can put their dollars on those trickier, harder, bigger questions where they might not have the expertise on their team because it's not something they need day to day, day in and day out. But they'll be able to now go get that on the market with the flexibility of the spend they've freed up on the other side. They're probably also going to be able to make a lot better predictions of where their legal spend is going in the future. The tools are absolutely going to give them some capabilities about planning that has been hard for lawyers and legal departments, I think, without it. So it's going to give them a broader look forward that will, I think, allow them at the end of the day to just better serve their clients.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how GPT-4 in particular is really helpful. I have found it very helpful as a thought partner for strategy development. And I don't think, maybe most lawyers think of it in that way of having that capacity. But I think you're right. We focus so narrowly on the research and the writing and the brief drafting and all of that. But there are like much bigger ways to use the technology, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know GC's departments that are doing great doing things that they really value with their billing using the technology. And it's allowing them to learn things about their own workflows that was just harder to know without this kind of advancement in the technology. So one of the places you and I have both spent a lot of time is in law schools. And one of the places I think there's probably going to be some growing pains is in legal education. And I wonder what your thoughts are on how law schools will need to adapt, if they'll need to adapt, and what the technology will mean for legal education and law students more generally.
Yeah, and I think I want to build on your point about the opportunities that this creates for different stakeholders. We've been in sort of a very steady state world in terms of which schools graduates are hired by which employers, what the approaches are to legal education. It's very, very uniform. It's a hallmark of American legal education that it's, what you're getting essentially in terms of what the students have studied in law school, including their legal research and writing classes. I think we're in this interesting moment where employers, for the first time, will have to look under the hood of the different schools' curricula to see which schools are actually adapting their curricula to respond to changing skills needs. And I think that creates real opportunities for schools that have been building a muscle for a while at integrating technology, design thinking, systems redesign, professionalism and client focus to emerge as real leaders in the employment market. And I know you and I are fans of a few programs in particular, Suffolk Law School's program, Vanderbilt's program. I think it's an interesting time for those schools to really rise to the fore and be leading the development of future curriculum. I'm also excited. One of the things I personally struggled with as a law student, who didn't know anything about the law, and that I find disappointing maybe in the legal education model, is the lack of formative feedback that's customized for new law students. These are really complicated topics you're learning in the first semester of school in an environment that's not always comfortable. And you don't really know until you take the final exam and you get a grade a month later that determines a lot of your job prospects at the outset, whether you understand anything. So I'm excited at the idea that we can put into the hands of students their own ability to create customized GPTs that are trained on their professor's sample exams, outlines from upper class students, horn books, those kinds of things, and test against that in real time to figure out if they're actually learning what they want to be learning. I think there are well-being benefits, there are DE&I benefits, and there's just straight up learning benefits that can come from that. So I'm really bullish on some of the opportunities. I think there will be a talent crisis in all organizations and maybe law schools, most specifically at people who are connected to the market, to the practice, to what people will be doing, and have the ability to translate that into curricula and teach it with impact in a world where those skills will be also very valuable to law firms. And I think we'll see a lot of talent wars. We're already seeing them unfold in the law firm space. But what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I do think that there is going to be this opportunity for a reshuffling of the way law firms think about different law school programs, and law school programs that are able to really take advantage of this technology, both to provide better education to their students and then education about the technology to their students can probably have a moment here where they can market their students to law firms that might not have spent a lot of time there before. So I think that's exciting. I like when I like when innovators in any space get rewarded, and I think innovators in legal education will be rewarded in the coming years. So I'm in favor of that. I love the opportunity for individual feedback and tutoring, especially in a setting where some law students just will have a very hard time saying it's hard for them to understand what's going on. I was one of them. I didn't have any lawyers in my family when I went to law school. I went to NYU Law School, which is great law school. But I sat in most of my class and felt like they were speaking a language I didn't understand. And I did the best I could, but I was definitely not confident to tell anyone that I wasn't sure how I was doing. So I was just going to find out after that exam at the end of a semester. And I think we know from lots of other disciplines now that that's not the best way to learn. And so I do think the changes that might come for law students who I have a lot of empathy for, having been one of them, are pretty exciting. So again, another area where I'm a lot more positive than I am negative about what could be.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons we're positive, and I want to circle back on the judicial point, is, we're a self-regulated profession, and a lot of the educational model is sort of designed by, as a student, I didn't feel like I was part of the design process and understanding how I was being educated. And this technology really, I think, will force some reimagination among the people who have power to change court systems and legal education. I wonder if you have thoughts about regulation. Of course, the practice is regulated at the state Supreme Court level, particularly the unauthorized practice of law. To me, it feels like we're about to enter this era of whack-a-mole for state Supreme Courts that may not be prepared for the implications of this. But it also puts in the hands of regular people technology that could be really helpful at expanding access to justice. So what do you think regulators should be thinking about?
I think it's going to be a fascinating ride to watch how that all plays out. I saw just today in, I don't know if it was Law 360 or ALM, that there's a new lawsuit against LegalZoom for the unlicensed practice of law in New Jersey. And I was like, oh, how quaint, LegalZoom. It's LegalZoom sort of like kicking it back to the 1980s. I thought we had all gotten comfortable with LegalZoom at this point. Like, people should have some legal information if they can't afford it, But apparently there's a new lawsuit accusing them of the unauthorized practice of law. That seems like that's going to be very hard to keep track of in an era where you can build your own GPT even on, accurate legal information, or you can just go to ChatGPT and ask, and you're going to get a pretty good answer for a lot of legal questions. And that answer is only going to get better with each model. And I don't know. I don't know how the technology this time doesn't run over the regulators. So if I were, if I were in the position of trying to figure out how to regulate it, I think I would want to take a very ambitious approach to letting some flowers grow and seeing what might happen that could help the people that need help. So I do think that regulators that are going to try to operate the way they've always operated are going to have a very hard time with this technology. So I think it's going to call for a new approach by regulators. But that too is like another reason why it's going to be fun to have these conversations. I don't have answers for them. My only answer is what worked yesterday is not going to work tomorrow. And so it's time for everybody to roll up their sleeves and figure out all of the positive things we can build and fix together because of this technology. And regulators should be part of that conversation. Like, it should be good news for everybody. But there's a lot yet to learn.